Hi, I'm Damari Gray. You're watching Reggae Boyz commentary.
I'm Altaman Freddie Whatler.
And I'm Ricardo Baby Gardner, and you are watching the Reggae Boyz commentary.
This video is brought to you by Andy Gone Nuts. 100% guaranteed fresh coconut water delivered straight to your door. Call 876-309-6128. That's 876-309-6128. Refreshing and affordable. For more information, follow them on Instagram at Andy Gone Nuts. Truly refreshing. And Crumble by Mrs. C. Old English fudge and other delectable sweet treats. Call or WhatsApp 876-586-0471. That's 876-586-0471. Can you believe it? Hello, everybody. I'm Simon Preston, and welcome back to Reggae Boyz commentary. It is Thursday, April 17, 2025. Can you believe it? 5 years, 1 month, and 7 days since Thursday Lives became a thing. How is everybody doing? I hope you all are doing well. Thank you so much for tuning in to another video on this platform. Please do hit the subscribe button. Let's get to 25,000 subscribers before the end of the month. Come on, guys, let's go. Looking forward to your help and support in that regard. How's everybody doing? Everybody doing okay? Well, let me know how you guys are doing. Let me know how the week is going, and so on and so forth. Really looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say, and smash the like button. Let's get this video to 100 likes. All right, guys, 100 likes. Let's get this video to 100 likes. Only gone 14 likes. You guys can do much better than that as we get into things. But first, let me touch on the comment. All right, let me touch on the comments, because so far it is 16 likes so far, but let's get it to 100 likes. Okay, let's do that. Let's do that. Look at the comments. United are back. Get in. I'm Special says, go on, United. And of course, you got the Jamaican flag coming in as well, quite early. Nitro 69, because you know there's another Nitro. You have one that is Nitro and you have Nitro 69. I'm wondering if both Nitros are the same person, but what I know for a fact is that, you know, I'm wondering if it is the same person. That's what I would say as well. So Manchester United through to the semi-finals of the UEFA Europa League. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? Through to the semi-finals of the UEFA Europa League. Absolutely fantastic. Amazing. Did you guys see the second half of extra time? Leon are 4-2 up. Bruno Fernandes pulls one back, 4-3. Kobe Mino, 4-4. And then Harry Maguire in stoppage time, 5-4. It didn't have the quite emotional value as Paris with Rashford scoring. But what I will say is that it did certainly bring a spur. And now United are in a semi-final. Think about it. Think of Manchester United in semi-finals. This is the 3 years on the bounce now. Yeah, this is the third year on a bounce that something like this is actually happening. A European semi-final as well, and now 3 wins away from a trophy. I'm going to say Spurs versus United in the final, but let's see. let's see how everything falls into place. All right, so we can go right into what lies ahead. Well, Detonation, the reality of the situation is before you can be called up to represent your country for a competitive international, you do need a Jamaican passport. That is what I'll say. Having a Jamaican passport makes a lot of help. Brownman Security says, watching you live, a good time, Simon. Hey, you all right, Brownman Security? All is well. Hope you guys are good. All the Manchester United fans in the chat, say aye. All right? All the Manchester United fans watching this video right now, just say aye. All you have to do in the comments is say aye. It doesn't take much out of you to just put the aye button now, does it? All you have to do is say aye, okay? Yeah, man, just say aye. That's all that you need. Sansu Whitey says, El Reggae Boyz. Sí, Selección Jamaica es un equipo muy fácil para entender, pero un equipo muy difícil para jugar contra, porque hay muchos jugadores en este equipo Jamaica que juegan en las ligas en Europa, por ejemplo, Inglaterra y otros países en Europa también. Entonces, Jamaica es un equipo muy difícil para jugar contra. Jamaica va a Mundial 2026. Colin Quest says aye. Colin Quest, how are you doing, sir? Man, it's been a while. It's been a while, Colin Quest. Where have you been? I can tell you, it has been a while. It has been a while. It has been a while. That's a very good question, Andrew. 3 European trophies. Chelsea, Arsenal. To be honest with you, Nitro, no, because in the year that West Ham won it, the year that West Ham won the Conference League was the year that City won the Champions League. Now, in terms of the Europa League that year, I believe that was the year that Roma lost, remember? Because in terms of the Europa League last year, remember, it was Atalanta, and the year before that was Sevilla. So, to be honest with you, no, that hasn't happened. That hasn't happened, to be honest with you, Nitro. No, that hasn't happened. As I said, Detonation, having a Jamaican passport is the very, very important thing, because that is how you represent Jamaica. Because I see Vinicius Jr. playing well, that doesn't mean that I can ask him to represent Jamaica. Absolutely not. He's a Brazilian. He's not a Jamaican. And even if he were to marry a Jamaican, yes, he could get a Jamaican passport. But guess what? He's already married. Not that he's unmarried, but he's already represented Brazil. That is what I mean to say. Omar Henry says, all right, sip, sip. One Love says, blessings. Detonation says, a Liverpool fan. Oh, you're a fan of the League Two side. Okay, cool. All right, so the thing is, Liverpool, do you understand why there is so much dialogue? And you could say an agenda to some extent against Liverpool Football Club. Let me explain. From 1985 to 1990, European clubs were banned from participating in European competition. English clubs were banned from participating in European competition. So based on the behavior of some fans that they had in a European game, it meant that Everton, who were league champions in England during the time, didn't go on to go to the Champions League, well, European Cup as it was called back then, and go on and win a couple of titles. Because I am absolutely certain that if English clubs were allowed to play in Europe from 1985 to 1990, I am absolutely certain that Everton would win 2 Champions League titles, and I'm absolutely certain that you would have Arsenal have a deep run in one of the competitions. I am absolutely certain about that. RPM says, yes, Simon, we did it. I'm telling you, it's been quite a journey with United, because last couple of years you can basically tell the change in the club and basically the way that they've been acting so far. So what I can say, being 3 wins away from a trophy is a magnificent thing for this football club. So now what I think is so important is that when we go into these massive games now, you've got Bilbao home and away. So May 1, I think it's May 1 and May 8, isn't it? May 1, May 8, the finals on the 21st or something like that. So basically, when you look at all the massive games that lie ahead for United, you can tell basically what it means to the club. United have already won the Europa League, we know that already, but taking home another piece of silverware means Champions League football next season. And that's massive for the club to be able to compete in Europe, give Roman Almarim a bigger budget to work with, and it gives him an opportunity to work with the players in pre-season and basically have that summer to basically settle in, really. I know people are going to say, but what about the players that we have right now? I agree. Basically, you do need reinforcements in the club. Basically, that's needed. But at the same time, you have to say that the players in the academy are coming on quite nicely as well. So don't be surprised you see a couple of those lads make the transition from the academy into the first team as well. Don't be surprised that happens. Colin Quest says he's in Maryland. Okay. Donovan Reese says, I like to hear your Spanish. Yeah, man, big up yourself, man. Enough respect. Marvin is a City fan. Oof. He's a fan of Stockport. What do you mean, Lewis? I was just speaking Mancunian. That's how you speak in Manchester. When you're in Manchester, you speak with a Mancunian accent. That's basically how you talk when you're in Manchester. But when you're in Newcastle now, you talk a little bit deeper. So that's the way that they talk up in Newcastle. When you hear Alan Shearer, Peter Beardsley, Andy Carroll, and players like that, you understand the reason why they were there. Remember, Steve McLaren was actually the manager of Newcastle United, and he actually had as an assistant there Paul Simpson as well. And they had a lot of backroom stuff as well that works so quite well with the club at Newcastle United. Yes, man, love the Mank chat. Yeah, man, big up, big up. Yeah. Carl Largy says, greetings, Simon, all respect. I'm doing well. Well, Nitro, remember that Radcliffe basically came out and said that Almiron is building for the future. So when it comes to Almiron and his job at the club, his job is not under threat at all, because Manchester United have bought into the project that we're going to give this man time and we're going to give him the resources we need to build the club forward. Of course, there are certain things that are under high consideration right now. The new stadium, and in addition to that, in terms of expanding the staff as well. I think there are plans to bring in about 3 to 5 more video analysts as well. So there's so many things to do. No, Alcine Lewis, I guess you have never been to England or up north and heard the different accents. So that was the Mancunian accent. And when you go to Liverpool and start sounding like Steven Gerrard and Jamie Carragher, that's the way they talk in Liverpool and Everton and Tranmere Rovers, because that's a part of a country called Merseyside. So when you're in Merseyside, you've got a street, and it's called Jamaica Street. Have you ever wondered why in Liverpool they've got a street called Jamaica Street? Because when Jamaica was an English colony, what used to happen was there'd be a transportation of goods from Liverpool that goes straight to Jamaica. And vice versa. That's how it works. So basically, when Jamaica used the soil and built all the sugar, and all the profits came from Jamaica, went straight back to England. Do you know what I mean? Like, so that's basically how it works, and that's why there's a Jamaica Street in the middle of Merseyside in Liverpool. So that's the way to talk in Liverpool. Now, Birmingham, like where you have players like Damari Gray's from, Troy Deeney, Darren Moore. So when you go into the West Midlands, it's like a Birmingham sort of accent. So when you hear them talk, it's like a sing-songy up and down. It's not quite like the Scouse accent, but basically you can understand the way that they've been talking. So whether you are in Handsworth, or whether you're in Wolves, or whether you are in Aston Villa or West Bromwich Albion, wherever you are, really, you can understand the way that they're talking. It just goes a bit up and down. Do you know what I mean? Like Peaky Blinders, do you know, when you're talking like that? So that's the way they talk over there. So that's the way they talk up in Birmingham. So we've looked at the Mancunian accent, the Geordie accent, the Merseyside accent, the Midlands accent. So we've basically looked at some of those accents quite well. So I'm just thinking if there's any other accent I haven't really touched. But of course, you've got the London accents quite easy. It's easily understandable, but you've got different London accents because you've got the one with the Jamaican fusion to it, because as we're in certain parts of London, of course, the massive Caribbean diaspora. So you have that Jamaican mix of things. So you hear Wagwan fam, it's cool fam, and certain things like that. Do you know what I mean? So when you are in London And when you go even further south in England, you hear what sounds like an uppity sort of accent. But what I can tell you is that the souther you go in England, the more easily you're understood. So when I, Simon Preston, speak standard English, like the way I'm speaking right now, it is easily understood. So when you go to Southampton, Brighton, you hear this sort of accent. However, you have a place in England that is called Cornwall and Devon, and they talk when they mesh words together. So they say stuff like, and I just naturally jump down to what we feel, keep on about. And basically, what that means is a hedge is an edge. He only chopped it down to support his view. What are people moaning about? I suppose. Yes, I suppose. So that is what you call West Country accent. And West Country accent is in the southern western part of England. And that is exactly where you have, Cornwall, Devon, and when they mesh all the words together. Junk. Yeah, that's a load of junk. I do for this one. I do for this one. So you guys get the drift. You get the drift there. Okay. So let's continue on with the comments. Yes, Kevin Keegan, he did. He was a double Ballon d'Or winner. I believe the next Englishman after him would have been Michael Owen in 2001 to go on and do so. But yeah, absolutely. In terms of him in 78 and 79, he was at Hamburg at the time in the Bundesliga. His second season in Germany. Remember, he scored 17 goals in the league in 34 appearances. And he was a sort of player that, he created a lot of those chances on his own, put it that way. He had to work to create those chances. But yeah, you're looking at somebody that won the Bundesliga in Germany. And of course, at Liverpool, he's somebody that won 3 league titles, an FA Cup, 2 Charity Shields. He won a European Cup in 77 and also 2 UEFA Cups as well. So you're talking about an individual that has been successful, I should say, So yeah, Kevin Keegan won the Ballon d'Or 78 and 79. And of course, the next Englishman to go on and win it would be Michael Owen. And to this day, Michael Owen is the last Englishman to go on and win the Ballon d'Or. Who do we think is the next Englishman who could win the Ballon d'Or? Probably Jude Bellingham, but probably Jude Bellingham. Yeah, that's what I would say. And of course, before the likes of Kevin Keegan, the last Englishman before him would have been Stanley Matthews. But yeah, since then, you've had South Americans, you've had Portuguese, you've had French, Croatian, Spanish, Italians, Bulgarians, Dutch in the last couple of decades, Donovan Reese says, we, North London and Goona, love to hear you sound like us. Nah, fam, you see in them places there, yeah? You have to understand that when you're in London, it's a different sort of accent. Do you know what I mean? Because when you're in London, yeah, you got North London, you got South London, which is Croydon, yeah, you got West London, which is Ealing, which is mainly a population of the Asian community, but you got Jamaicans there as well, because I do have cousins who are Indo-Jamaicans who live in those areas. So you understand what I'm saying? And of course, you got East London, Stratford, and them place there, where you have persons of African heritage. So London is just mixed. Well, Omar Henry, as I'm sure you'd have been aware, that when it comes to squad announcement, it has always been 5 to 7 days before a window. It has been like that, 5 to 7 days before a window. So when you're looking at the World Cup qualifiers being June 7 and June 10, then you're looking at June 1, the very, very latest June 2, in terms of for the World Cup qualifiers. Yeah, man, enough respect, man. Big up. I asked Abs, how are you doing, sir? Hope all is well with you. Long time no see. Where are you these days? Qatar, Dubai, Somalia? Where are you? It's at the Brentford Community Stadium on May 27. Cockney spoken in London, isn't it? Yeah, Cockney spoken in London, different parts. Do you know what I mean? Like, when you're a West Ham fan, you can sound a little bit like this. Do you know what I mean? West Ham and Millwall. The top fans don't like this, like Mikel Antonio. Yeah, they want Antonio back at the club. So you can understand the way they're talking down there. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, you can just tell our West Ham fans it's now their thing. So, yeah. So that's basically a bit of West Ham, isn't it? Jason Guna. Remember on your stream, you were saying it. You were saying, Jason, when United were 2-0 up, you're like, hold on, watch Leon in the second half. So yeah, it came to fruition. It came to fruition. You're absolutely right. Yeah, what a comeback indeed. Can you imagine, Jason, if it was Arsenal to win the Champions League, United to win the Europa League, Chelsea to win the Conference League? But you know what would I'm not gonna lie, Jason, you know what makes things interesting? Like, if Tottenham won the Europa League, they had their celebration in London, and then here comes Arsenal winning the Champions League. Again, it would just feel like the bigger brother shining over the little brother, so to speak. You understand what I mean there? So it would just be so compelling if Tottenham won the Europa League, had their celebration in London, and then Arsenal goes, hold my beer. And Arsenal goes and win it. It just would be so Arsenal to go and do it. Like, there's no way that Arsenal would go and make Tottenham win a European trophy, and we don't go and better that. We need, like Arsenal fans would say, no, we have to better that. We have to better what they just did a while ago, Good player, eh, Nitro? Miles Lewis Kelly, good Kelly. Bukayo Saka, good player, yeah. Declan Rice and Peas are the best. Declan Rice, it would be nice. It would be nice to see Declan Rice win it, but there's a number of things that have to go in your favor for that to happen. Yes, Nitro, I have heard of George Weah. Yes, I have heard of George Weah before. George Weah, the father of Tim Weah, who represents the United States. George Weah, who is married to a Jamaican. Yes, the George Weah that represented Monaco, PSG, AC Milan, Chelsea, Manchester City, Marseille, Al Jazeera. Yes, I know exactly who George Weah is. The same man that represented Liberia from 1986 to 2018. Yes, I know exactly who George Weah is. The same man that went on to play for Liberia 78 matches and scored 18 goals in the process. Yes, I know who George Weah is. Yes, the same George Weah that played at the African Cup of Nations for Liberia in 1996 and 2002. Yes, I do know who George Weah is. So I'm not sure if that was a serious question or if that was a sarcastic question. Okay, you're in London presently. Okay, cool. Yeah, most things under control, thanks. Most things under control. Big up. Jason says it doesn't want Tottenham. Don't worry, Tottenham won't win. There's gonna come a time though, Jason. There's gonna come a time where Tottenham is gonna win something, And when they do it, they're going to rub it in everybody's faces. So when Tottenham next win a trophy, they're going to rub it in everybody's faces. I'm telling you, they're going to run to everybody's face. They're going to say, look at what we won. Look at what we did. Imagine, Jason, if Tottenham had won the Champions League in 2019, you wouldn't hear the end of it to this day. Tottenham Hotspur, the first North London club to win the Champions League. You would not hear the end of it until thy kingdom come. You would not hear the end of it. So I know you were cheering for Liverpool that day. I wasn't cheering for Liverpool that day. Never. But yeah. I absolutely think that it's a possibility of happening, detonation. Absolutely. I believe that Mikel Arteta has gotten his troops to believe. I really do think so. I have seen an effect in terms of what it has done to the league in terms of performances in the Premier League itself. But Arsenal has to look at it that we're 3 matches away from a trophy that is the first of this kind in our cabinet. And Arsenal is too big of a football club, in my opinion, to not have a trophy of this caliber within their cabinet, frankly speaking. That's how I genuinely feel about it. Teams that I think that should have a European trophy already that don't. Well, Tottenham has won the Europa League before 2 or 3 times. Arsenal, based on the caliber of their history, they deserve a European trophy. And I'm thinking about other clubs, Newcastle United, Everton, especially Everton. Everton Football Club in the 80s was boss, prime James Bond football. So they should have gotten a European trophy. Yes, he is has Jamaican heritage on one side. Nyron says PSG will win the Champions League. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Well, I saw the question. The question said, have you heard of him? That's what I saw. IS Ab says, okay. So, as you can see by the title of this video, it says the Reggae Boyz in England. Do you guys know when the last time that Jamaica actually played in England? Well, the last time would have been 2014. Do you know who that was against? Do you know when that was? Do you know who took the field that day for Jamaica? Well, let me pull up the information for you so that you are aware. It was against Egypt and took place at Brisbane Road. Brisbane Road, as we know, is the home to Leyton Orient Football Club. Jamaica took on Egypt that day. The match ended 2-2. Okay, let me see if I can be able to get the lineup for you. But on that day, the goal scorers for Jamaica were none other than Joel Grant and Simon Dawkins. Two very good goals for Jamaica. Joel Grant, as you remember, represented Jamaica at under 20 level in 2007 with the likes of Joel Senior and the likes of Dwayne Carr, etc. So, in terms of this game against Egypt, it was a friendly match that took place in June prior to the 2014 World Cup. Jacomina Barrett started in net, and of course in defense you had Adrian Mariappa and Wes Morgan. You had at left back Kim Artaxi Lawrence. At right back you had Lloyd Doyley. You had Rudy Austin in central midfield, and he also received some assistance from Romario Campbell and Joel Grant. You had Chris Humphrey on one wing. On the other, you had Simon Dawkins. And of course, up top, you had Michael Seaton. The players that came on were Nicholas Beckett, Dino Williams, Hughan Gray, and Jamar Loza. Those were the players that came on in this game for Jamaica. For Egypt, there were a couple of familiar faces that some of you might say, So yes, Mohamed Salah did start for Egypt in this game. Mohamed El Neni started for Egypt in this game as well. And Ahmed El Shenawi also played in this game as well for Egypt as the match ended 2-2. So yes, Mo Salah played, and so did El Neni, who also played as well. El Neni actually scored in the game, and Bassem Morsi also scored in this game as well. Well, more like. So this was our last friendly match in England. Float Management says, bless up, Simon. Bless up. I hope you're doing well. Yeah, I know Float. I know him. Float Management, Joel Senior. Yeah, good player. Represented Jamaica a handful of times as well. Played against Cuba in 2012. Played against the United States when we beat the US for the first time at a senior level, 2-1. He played in that game. He played against Antigua and Barbuda when we beat them 4-1. I run into him all the time in Fort Lauderdale, honestly. Good guy, represented Harborview, and even played a little in the USL as well. So, yeah, man, Joel Senior is a good guy. Yeah, man, very, very good. So, yeah. Well, Jason, the reality of the situation is that the next game was not in England, and so we're just going to discuss about in England the matches that we have played in England. So prior to 2014, right, in terms of the other matches that we would have played in England, I just want to highlight that as well. So remember, prior to the 1998 World Cup, we played against Queen's Park Rangers, played against Man City, and played against Wales. We beat QPR 2-1. We had a 0-0 draw against Manchester City. And of course, against Wales, there was a 0-0 draw. So that was prior to the 98 World Cup. And if you realize there's a trend with the matches that we have in England, the matches that we play in England, they always come before this event. They always come before a big tournament that lies ahead. So the match against Egypt, we realized that exactly a year later, the nucleus of the squad went on to a Gold Cup final, and of course competed competitively at the Copa America. We go back to the 98, we went on to the World Cup and also recorded a victory at the 98 World Cup. Prior to 2014, the last time would have been 2009, when we, under John Barnes, we took on Nigeria at the Lions Den. That's Millwall Stadium. It was Sean Stoyers in net for Jamaica. And quite a team was Damien Stewart, Tyrone Marshall, Claude Davis, Jermaine Johnson, Luton Shelton, Marlon King, Jason Morrison, DeMar Phillips, Rudo Austin, and Tyrone Mears. In terms of the players that came on for Jamaica in the second half, Jamal Campbell-Rice, Wilbur Wolf, Eric Vernon, Omar Daly, and Dion Burton. Those were the players that came on. That was Dion Burton's actually last game for Jamaica. Yeah. But yeah. Yep, I am aware about that, Donovan Rice. What I mean in terms of the Champions League. So what I'm meaning specifically is in terms of the European Cup, it used to be called European Cup, now it's called the Champions League. So that is what I mean when I refer to European trophies. So Everton and Arsenal Football Club, for me, are two clubs for me that should say, oh, we've won a European Cup or we've won a Champions League. Those are two English clubs that should say that. Red Star Belgrade has won a Champions League, haven't they? How so, Nitro? I've just said to Jason that I'm referring to matches in England as based on the title. So that is what I said. So we're discussing Jamaica's matches that Jamaica have played on English soil. This is what we're referring to. All right, good. Prior to the friendly match against Nigeria, of course, this match was in 2009, by the way, that 0-0 draw. Prior to that, the last time on English soil would have been 2006. And that was against England at Old Trafford. Yep, that match took place against England at Old Trafford. And if you remember, that was England's last game prior to the 2006 World Cup. And now England, prior to the 2025 European Championships, are going to play the Reggae Girls. So quite compelling that England is going to play Jamaica in their last game prior to World Cup and now last game prior to Euros. What was England's lineup that day? Well, Paul Robinson, Rio Ferdinand, John Terry, Jamie Carragher, Ashley Cole, Steven Gerrard, Frank Lampard, David Beckham, Joe Cole, Peter Crouch, Michael Owen. Players who came on for England: Sol Campbell, Wayne Bridge, David James, Aaron Lennon, Michael Carrick, and Stuart Downing. Yeah. So my second favorite footballer played the game, but my first favorite football player was rested. So it is what it is now. Jamaica that day: Omar Daly, Damien Stewart, Claude Davis, Ricketts, Jermaine Hugh, Ricardo Fuller, Garfield Reed, Jason Newell, Jermaine Taylor, Luton Shelton, Jamal Campbell-Rice. Players that came on were Teofur Bennett, Kari Stevenson, Jermaine Johnson, and Dion Burton. So yeah, that was the team that day. Yes, Machine Man. Remember, he would have been a 1987 player, Joe Senior. Yeah, he was born 1987. And when you put that into perspective in terms of where he is, he'd be 37 right now, going on 38 this year. But yeah, he stopped playing football in around 2016, 17. And yeah, now he's residing in the United States. Devon Smith says, good afternoon, Tim. Which games are you referring to, Nitro? Are you referring to the 2006 game, or are you referring to 2014? Because after the 2014 games that were played in Europe generally against Switzerland, France, Egypt, those games in particular, right? Nobody really gained in terms of opportunities that were given for domestic players. You had Romario Campbell and Jacomina Barrett. Those were the players that played domestically in Jamaica that received opportunities. So that's what I'd say there. So yeah. Well, Devon Smith, we'll find out 5 to 7 days before the encounter, eh? That's right. TFR Bourne did score for Jamaica at a Gold Cup, as you remember, 2005 against South Africa. In that 3-3 draw, he helped us get that point. And, you know, when you reflect on the grand scheme of things, that goal was so important as it helped us to secure qualification to the quarterfinals of the Gold Cup in that year as well. Yeah, so as I was saying, Nitro, in 2014, the only domestic base players in the squad at the time would have been Romario Campbell and Jacquemina Barrett. Those were the only players. Michael Seaton was already overseas, you know, so, and of course the rest were players that apply their trade in England and by extension in Europe as well, because of course you have Chris Humphrey, who was in Scotland. Yeah, so yeah. Prior to 2006, of course, as you know, we played Ghana. Jason Ewell scored in that game, May 2006 against Ghana in Leicester. Prior to that, we have to go back to a calendar year of 2003. And what happened in 2003? Well, we took on Brazil, didn't we? We played Brazil and Australia. Australia in September, Red England's ground. And October 2003, we took on Brazil. And that game can still be found online to this very day. I'm going to try to remember the 11 out of my. Donovan Ricketts in goal. You had Craig Zadie, Garfield Reed. You had Claude Davis. All right. You had Tupper. You had Jamie Lawrence. You had Richard Langley. You had Ricardo Fuller, Dion Burton. All right. Tyrone Marshall. So that should be the 11. Of course, the second half we saw changes being made. Even Gerald Neal got a bit of the action as well against the Brazilians. Against Australia, Ricardo Fuller had an amazing, you know, in terms of his movements to be able to find Kevin Lisby for us to get the equalizer that day against the Australians. Also in 2003, we took on a team known by the name of India. And what happened against them? 2002. Jermaine Tuffy Anderson scored on his international debut for Jamaica. What happened after that? Well, history was made as the first Jamaican goalkeeper to score a goal for Jamaica was Aaron Lawrence in the 72nd minute. Remember, Aaron Lawrence wore the captain's armband for Jamaica. So typically what happened in those days is that whoever was the captain would take the penalty. Aaron Lawrence took the penalty, he scored the penalty, and Aaron Lawrence has a goal for Jamaica. And of course, Ian Pepper Goodison scored late on as well. That was at Vicarage Road in 2002. Jamaica 3, India 0. A few days later that we played India again. That was in Wolves. So we went from basically Hertfordshire up to the Midlands to play India in Wolves. And that match ended 0-0. So that's what the early 2000s looked like in terms of Jamaica playing matches in England. So yeah, that's where we are. Yep. Remember, Nyron, if you don't have a membership, then you'll have to pay the $9.99. If you already have a membership, then what it's going to do is that your credit card is going to be charged $9.99 the next month and the next month and the next month and the next month. You know what I'm saying? So what I'm saying is that you have to purchase the membership first to be able to have access to the game. In reference specifically to the Unity Cup, it is planned that the matches will be on JFF Live. Absolutely. Yes, Nitro Wild Boy scored for Jamaica. Aaron Lawrence scored for Jamaica. A penalty against India in a 3-0 win over India in 2002. You see, when you come on this platform, you learn new things. So that is why you have to subscribe, and that's why you have to pay the super chat, because exactly when you're on this platform, you learn things. And guess what? You get information. Okay? So that is what I expect you to do. Okay? So that is very, very important for you to grasp. So yes. So remember, Nyron, right now you'll see behind the scenes content. You will see the matches that the Reggae Boys have played. Friendlies against Trinidad, the Reggae Girls friendlies against Peru and the United States. You'll get access to those. You get to see some behind the scenes content as well. So certainly it is worth it. Mhm. I want to see. But yeah. What I want to do. Yes, Nitro, that's absolutely right. Good. Alrighty. And what I encourage you guys as well to do is to watch the Reggae Boys documentary. If you guys haven't already, I'd encourage you as well to watch the Reggae Boys documentary because you get to get some insights as well so that you know a little bit more about our history. Because even Niger said, "What? Aaron Lawrence scored for Jamaica?" A lot of people don't know that. So that is why I would encourage you to watch it because you get to have insights on it, you know? So what I'm gonna do is play a little of it so that you can be able to see it. All right. And from there, you can be able to learn a little bit more about football, when it started, and all of that stuff, you know? It's very important. So, what I will do is share it with you. It was documentary. The history of the Reggae Boys from 1910 to present. Yeah. Let me share screen so that you can watch it. All right. Mm-hmm. Jamaican football. This is 113 years of Jamaican football in one video. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the history of Jamaican football. So, where did it all begin? Well, let's go back to 1654. In late 1654, English leader Oliver Cromwell launched the Western Design Armada against Spain's colonies in the Caribbean. In April 1655, General Robert Venables led the Armada in an attack on Spain's fort at Santo Domingo Hispaniola. However, the Spanish repulsed this poorly executed attack, known as the Siege of Santo Domingo, and the English troops were soon, well, troubled by diseases. Weakened by fever and looking for an easier victory following their defeat at Santo Domingo, the English forces then sailed for Jamaica, the only Spanish West Indian island that did not have new defensive works. Spanish Jamaica had been a colony of Spain for over 100 years. In May 1655, around 7,000 English soldiers landed near Jamaica's Spanish town capital. The English invasion force soon overwhelmed the smaller numbers of Spanish troops. At the time, Jamaica's entire population only numbered roughly around 2,500 people. In the following years, Spain repeatedly attempted to recapture Jamaica, and in response, in 1657, the English governor of Jamaica invited buccaneers to base themselves at Port Royal on Jamaica to help defend against Spanish attacks. Spain never recaptured Jamaica, losing the Battle of Ocho Rios in 1657 and the Battle of Rio Nuevo in 1658. One historian wrote that for England, Jamaica was to be the dagger pointed at the heart of the Spanish Empire. Despite the fact that Jamaica was an English colony, Cromwell increased the island's white population by sending farmers, indentured laborers, land surveyors, and other agriculture-based workers to the island. England gained formal possession of Jamaica from Spain in 1670 through the Treaty of Madrid. 2 centuries later, the beautiful game of football was introduced to Jamaica. It was in fact introduced to Jamaicans in 1890 and taught all across the island. And 3 years later, in 1893, the Kingston Cricket Club was founded, and this started football on the island. 2 years later, women's football was visible on the island. In 1910, the Jamaica Football Federation was formed. This was 6 years after FIFA was formed, but they were not a FIFA member just yet. Between 1925 and 1932, a Jamaican men's national team was formed and played a number of friendlies, mostly against Haiti. Those matches were played at Sabina Park, the main cricket ground of the island. March 22, 1925 is a day never to be forgotten in Jamaica's footballing history, as it was the first time the nation took the field as they defeated Haiti by 2-1 in Port-au-Prince. Willie Passalege, a man that was born in Jamaica of Portuguese heritage, was Jamaica's first goal scorer in international football in that very game. 1930 was Jamaica's first competitive assignment as they competed at the 1930 edition of the CAC Games in Cuba. Jamaica, they finished 5th out of 6 teams. They fell 3-1 to Cuba and 5-4 to Honduras. In the following years, female football clubs started to form in Kingston, playing a first match in the Stadium Sabina Park in November 1935 to raise funds for charities. In the coming years, women's football started to outgrow the men's game on the island and reached the cities of Spanish Town, Montego Bay, Port Antonio, and St. Anne's Bay, attracting more fans than the men's game did and igniting public debates about the need for a nationwide league.
You may know of FlexJobs as a job search website, but we're a whole lot more than that. We're a job search service
For women. In the 1950s, Jamaica played friendlies versus Trinidad and Tobago, Haiti, Barbados, and also Guyana, but they did not compete in the World Cup qualifiers until the 1960s. But before that, Jamaicans were creating waves overseas. Yes, in 1951, Jill Heron became the first black footballer to play professionally in Scotland, as he was on Celtic's roster from 1951 to 1952, a Jamaican-born man. Prior to that, Lindy de la Pena, the man that went to Monroe College and was such a talented athlete, won the league title with English club Portsmouth twice, 1949 and 1950. In April 1950, after a successful few years with Portsmouth, he transferred up to the northeast, to Middlesbrough, where his career took off. He played on the wing or inside forward and became Borough's leading goal scorer in 1952, 54, and 56. In total, he scored 93 league goals and FA Cup goals cumulatively in 270 appearances. That is an average of almost 1 goal every 3 appearances. He moved to Mansfield Town in June 1958, contributing 27 goals in 115 appearances over 2 years, before retiring from league football in 1960. In 1962, the same year Jamaica became independent, the JFF became a member of FIFA. At the 1962 Central American and Caribbean Games played in Jamaica, the national team was led by Brazilian coach Jorge Peña. Jamaica finished in fourth with 2 wins over Puerto Rico and Cuba. A year later, Jamaica competed in the first CONCACAF Championship in El Salvador, where the team finished last in their group, including Mexico, the Netherlands Antilles, and eventual winner, Costa Rica. In 1965, Jamaica attempted to qualify for the 1966 World Cup in England. After finishing first in its preliminary group that included Cuba and the Netherlands Antilles, Jamaica faced Costa Rica and Mexico in the final round, where the winner would qualify for the World Cup. Opening the final round campaign with a 3-2 loss at home against Mexico, Jamaica lost the return match 8-0. That's right. And then 7-0 to Costa Rica, and ended with a draw at home in the return match, ultimately finishing with a single point. In January 1967, Jamaica attempted to qualify for the CONCACAF Championship, but they were eliminated after finishing third in a group of 5 teams. In 1968, George Hamilton became the new head coach as Jamaica attempted to qualify for the 1970 World Cup in Mexico. Most of the squad for the campaign was young, with only a few remaining players from its previous attempt at qualifying being in the team. This was due to most of its players being either retired or migrating abroad, as in the late 60s to early 70s, there was quite a bit of migration from Jamaica to England, the United States, and also Canada. Jamaica finished last with 0 points from 4 games. After finishing last in the 1969 CONCACAF Championship and not qualifying for the following championship, Jamaica had to withdraw from qualifying for the 1973 CONCACAF Championship after 17 players were suspended for poor behavior during a tour of Bermuda. In 1977, Jamaica competed in qualifying for the 1977 CONCACAF Championship, which was also the qualifier for the 1978 World Cup. Taking on Cuba in the first round, Jamaica lost both of its games 5-1 on aggregate. Jamaica did not attempt to qualify for the 1982 and 1986 World Cups due to insufficient funds. The team returned to international competition after qualifying for the 1989 CONCACAF Championship, which was part of the qualifiers for the 1990 World Cup in Italy. After defeating Puerto Rico 3-1 in aggregate in the preliminaries, Jamaica played the United States for a spot in the final round, and after a 0-0 draw at home, they lost 5-1 to the United States. Don't ask the die-hard fans about Lenny Dennis. In 1990, Carl Brown was signed as head coach and led Jamaica into qualifying for the 1990 Caribbean Cup, finishing tied for third after the final round was abandoned due to Tropical Storm Arthur. In 1991, Jamaica defeated Trinidad and Tobago by 2-0 to win the Caribbean Cup for the first time in their history and qualify for the inaugural CONCACAF Gold Cup. Jamaica eventually were eliminated from the first round after losses to Honduras, Mexico, and Canada. Also in 1991, Jamaica's women's national team played their first international game as they fell 1-0 to Haiti in Port-au-Prince. So, from 1991, we go to 1992. Yep, that's right. The journey continues. After the Jamaicans lost to Trinidad and Tobago in the final of the 1992 Caribbean Cup, they started their campaign in preliminary rounds of qualifying for the 1994 World Cup. After defeating Puerto Rico 3-1 in aggregate in the second preliminary round, Jamaica eliminated Trinidad and Tobago and were grouped with Bermuda, Canada, and El Salvador, 2 of which would advance to the final round. Jamaica opened the second round with 2 1-1 draws against Canada and Bermuda, while the team lost its return match in Canada after a single goal from Dale Mitchell. After a 3-2 home win over Bermuda and 2 losses to El Salvador, Jamaica finished in third place and were eliminated. In 1993, Jamaica finished in second place after losing on penalties to Martinique of the final of the Caribbean Cup. This, of course, was a qualifier for the 1993 Gold Cup, which was held later that calendar year. During the tournament, the Jamaicans fell 1-0 to the United States. They bounced back with a victory over Honduras and drew with Panama. Eventually, they finished tied third in that Gold Cup after they drew 1-1 with Costa Rica in the third place playoff. The first time that Jamaica was advancing to the semi-finals of the CONCACAF Gold Cup, and the furthest and one of their best ever performances in the history of the tournament. Despite a 6-1 loss to Mexico in the semi-finals in Mexico City at the Azteca, well, yeah, there we go. And then we saw what happened later on in that third place playoff, a 1-1 draw and a bronze medal for Jamaica. After not qualifying for the final round of the 1994 Caribbean Cup, despite recording its largest margin of victory, a 12-0 victory over the British Virgin Islands, the team decided to hire Brazilian René Simões with the goal of helping the team to qualify for 1998. After being eliminated in the group stage of both the 1995 Caribbean Cup and the 1996 Caribbean Cup, Jamaica opened its 1998 World Cup qualifiers with a 2-0 aggregate win over Suriname. As we know, this followed with the victories over Barbados, which led Jamaica into the semi-final round. Yep, that is right, led to the semi-final round. And who did Jamaica play? Well, you tell me. That's right, Mexico, Honduras, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Mexico, Honduras, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So that was the semi-final round for the Jamaicans. And guess what? This is something which they conquered tremendously. Top of the group, only lost once. And along the journey, guess who scored at the Azteca? Walter Boyd. Yeah. Would you look at that? So that is what we'll have to say there. And then came the final round in 1997. Jamaica opened their campaign with a 0-0 draw against the Americans before being slapped for 6 by Mexico. Brought down to earth with a 0-0 draw against the Canadians and a 3-1 loss to Costa Rica. But then the tables started to turn. A 1-0 victory over El Salvador, a 1-0 victory over Canada, a 1-0 victory over Costa Rica, and then a 1-1 draw against the United States, a 2-2 draw against El Salvador, and then November 16, 1997, Jamaica becoming the first English-speaking Caribbean nation to qualify for the World Cup, the most crime-free day Jamaica has ever had. According to the Statistical Institute of Jamaica, no deaths were recorded on this day. Just let that process for a moment, folks. The following day was declared a national holiday. That in itself, special. Just let that sink in. That was special. Yeah. So that's something for us to process, for sure. 1998. Well, what happened in 1998?
One of my favorite parts about Two Flies.
1998, a year to remember for all. Jamaica competed at the 1998 CONCACAF Gold Cup, finishing first in a group which comprised Brazil, Guatemala, and El Salvador. With the help of goalkeeper Warren Barrett, Jamaica opened with a 0-0 tie against Brazil. After wins over Guatemala and El Salvador, Jamaica advanced to the semi-finals against Mexico. And it was Luis Hernandez with a golden goal. In the third place playoff, Jamaica lost to Brazil 1-0 as Romario scored. Jamaica ended fourth. At the 1998 FIFA World Cup, Jamaica finished third in their group, which comprised Argentina, Croatia, and Japan. Jamaica's victory came against Japan with Theodore Tapa Whitmore scoring both goals. Robbie Earle scored Jamaica's first ever goal in World Cup history. The following month, Jamaica competed in the finals of the 1998 Caribbean Cup, which was a qualifier for the 2000 CONCACAF Gold Cup. After finishing first in their group, Jamaica won the final 2-1 against Trinidad with goals from O'Neill MacDonald and Dean Sewell. In 1999, Jamaica experienced its biggest defeat in a 9-0 loss against Costa Rica. After finishing second in this group, Jamaica were eliminated by Cuba in the semi-finals of the 1998 Caribbean Cup. At the Gold Cup, Jamaica finished last in their group after losses to Honduras and Colombia. In 1999, Jamaica also made their debut at the Under-17 FIFA World Cup in New Zealand, where Jamaica fell to Burkina Faso 1-0, Paraguay 5-0, and Qatar 4-0. Star players from that tournament for Jamaica: Keith Kelly, and Alian Whitaker. René Simoes was replaced by Sebastião Lazzaroni, and the torch went on to Clovis de Oliveira. De Oliveira guided the Jamaicans to the final round of the World Cup qualifiers, but failed to qualify the team to the 2002 Gold Cup on goal difference. Jamaica made their debut at the Under-20 World Cup this year and started on a positive note as they held Egypt to a 0-0 draw. But after that, they fell 1-0 to Finland and 5-1 to Argentina. Fabian Dawkins scored Jamaica's first goal at an Under-20 World Cup. September 2, 2001, Jamaica's 49-game unbeaten run came to an end as they fell to Mexico 2-1. A few days later, Clovis de Oliveira was sacked after going down 1-0 to Honduras. Carl Brown was replaced for the last two games, with Jamaica still having a chance, but Joe Maxmore broke Jamaican hearts in a 2-1 victory to make the 2002 World Cup no longer possible. The Jamaicans then fell 1-0 to Costa Rica in the last game of the campaign at home as William Sunsing scored. In 2002, the Reggae Girls qualified for the 2002 CONCACAF Women's Gold Cup, the qualifying tournament for the 2003 Women's World Cup, but lost all of their preliminary round games. In 2006, the team qualified for the Women's Gold Cup again and finished in fourth. 2003, though, saw a year of change. Yep, that is right, change. 2003, there was change in leadership. Captain Burrell, who was in the hot seat for 9 years, was voted out as Creston Boxill took over. Jamaica went to the 2003 edition of the CONCACAF Gold Cup and got to the quarterfinals. Yep, they lost the opener 1-0 to Colombia in the Orange Bowl Stadium in Miami, but 2 days later defeated Guatemala 2-0. Andy Lowe and Andy Williams scoring for Jamaica. In the quarterfinals, they took on Mexico at the Azteca, and they were hit for 5. 2004, Boxill traveled to Brazil and sat and talked with Lazzaroni and convinced him of another stint. There were also some memorable performances that year as Jamaica defeated two-time World Cup winners Uruguay 2-0 and Venezuela, a team that was on the rise in international football, Marlon King scoring on his debut as Jamaica won that game by 2-1. The World Cup qualifiers for 2006 came around where Jamaica took on the United States, drew 1-1, fell 2-1 to Panama at home, then defeated El Salvador 3-0, and then drew 1-1 with Panama away. A disappointing 0-0 draw against El Salvador meant that Jamaica needed to defeat the United States on the final day. But that they couldn't do. Jamaica miss out on yet again another World Cup. Lazzaroni went, and Wendell Downswell came into the hot seat and went on a 14-game unbeaten run. He gave Luton Shelton his debut, and on November 24, 2004, Luton Shelton scored 4 goals on his international debut. No other man on the planet has ever done this. A 12-0 win over St. Martin. The Caribbean Cup campaign went into 2005, which Jamaica won. Thanks to Luton Shelton, Jamaica defeated Cuba by 1-0. That is right, over in Barbados. Also that calendar year, Jamaica went to the Gold Cup, and it was goals, 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 goals. They defeated Guatemala 4-3, had a thrilling 3-3 draw against South Africa, and then fell 1-0 to Mexico. They took on the United States in the quarterfinals and lost that game 3-1. Carl Brown returned to the hot seat. But there was some disappointment as Jamaica were shocked 2-1 by St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Jamaica missing out on qualifying for the 2007 edition of the CONCACAF Gold Cup. Carl Brown's last game in charge was a 1-1 draw against Peru before he was replaced by Bora Milutinovic. The honeymoon period started off well as Jamaica won the 2007 edition of the Lunar New Year Cup. That's right, Jamaica won a trophy. Bora Milutinovic gave a lot of opportunities to the homegrown players of the squad. In fact, only Luton Shelton and Ricardo Bibi Gardner at the time were the only overseas-based players part of the squad. But then, after a poor tour to Asia and Captain Horace Burrell being in the hot seat, there was change again. Captain Horace Burrell removed Bora Milutinovic in the hot seat and went for a Brazilian. But before that, Jamaica copped the silver at the Pan American Games in Rio de Janeiro. Kemar Dadadeli, Eric Vernon, Dwayne Miller, Dwayne Carr, James Thomas, John Ross Doyley. What a contingent that was, as Jamaica got a silver medal at the Pan Am Games. In 2008, it was the return of René Simoes, the professor, but he knew he had limited time. He had a 1-1 draw against Costa Rica, which followed with a 2-2 draw against Trinidad and Tobago. And then, after that, the matches came thick and thin. Another draw with Trinidad, a loss to Grenada. There was also a 5-1 victory over St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and then the big dance came of the qualifiers. Jamaica defeated the Bahamas 7-0, 6-0. Then the semi-final round, 1-1 draw against Canada, 3-0 loss to the Mexicans, a 2-0 loss to Honduras. Then René Simoes was removed and replaced by Theodore Tapa Whitmore. Jamaica defeated Mexico 1-0. Then Honduras 1-0. Then Canada 3-0. But it wasn't enough to take Jamaica to the final round. The Caribbean Cup took center stage and John Barnes was in the hot seat. Jamaica defeated Barbados by 2-1. Grenada 4-0. 1-1 draw against Trinidad. Beat Guadeloupe 2-0 in the semi-finals. And then in the final defeated Grenada 2-0 thanks to a pair of penalties from Luton Shelton. 2009 came around. John Barnes oversaw a 0-0 draw against Nigeria, a 3-2 win over Panama, Jamaica's first win over Panama in many, many decades. But he left before the Gold Cup to take a job at Tranmere Rovers. Jamaica were eliminated in the first round after losses to Canada, Costa Rica. Despite a 1-0 win over El Salvador, that was it for the Jamaicans. In 2010, due to lack of funding, the Jamaica Football Federation cut the senior women's program as well as the women's Olympic program. Subsequently, the team was unable to participate in the qualifiers for the 2011 FIFA Women's World Cup. In 2011, due to over 3 years of inactivity, Jamaica was not ranked in the FIFA Women's World Rankings. But also in 2010, on the men's side, there is something that we could reflect upon on a good note. Theodore Tapa Whitmore won his first trophy in the head coaching position of the national team, winning the 2010 Caribbean Cup. Yep, that is right. Remember that campaign? Well, they had a 3-1 win over Antigua and Barbuda, a 2-0 victory over Guadeloupe, a 4-0 win over Guyana, and then a victory over Grenada in the semifinals, and then a victory over Guadeloupe on penalties. The under-17s, well, that's what the 2011 campaign was all about. Jamaica qualified for the under-17 FIFA World Cup after winning their quarterfinal against Honduras at the Montego Bay Sports Complex. Jason Wright with a brace as Jamaica qualified for another under-17 World Cup. Jamaica went to the 2011 edition of the CONCACAF Gold Cup and they created history by, that's right, topping their group with 3 wins, Grenada, Guatemala, and Honduras. But in the quarterfinals, they fell 2-0 to the United States. At the Under-17 FIFA World Cup, there were some memories for the Jamaicans to reflect on. Despite an opening game 1-0 loss to Japan, they did score their first ever goal at an Under-17 FIFA World Cup as they fell 2-1 to Argentina. Silano Barnes scoring Jamaica's first ever goal at the Under-17 FIFA World Cup. But a couple of days later, you guys know what happened? Yeah, they got their first ever point at an Under-17 World Cup after a 1-1 draw against France. Andre L.A. Lewis scoring for the Jamaicans. 2012 came along and the World Cup qualifiers and the Caribbean Cup took center stage. The year started with Jamaica playing Cuba in friendly matches, Georgina James scoring on debut in a 1-0 victory, and then a couple of days later in Montego Bay, Jamaica won 3-0. Jamaica then went over to New Zealand and won by 3-2. That's right, Xavier Virgo, Tremaine Stewart, and Navian Boyd, 3 players who were playing their football on the island in that period of time. Yeah, they scored. That's right. That's right. The qualifiers came around, and Jamaica, by a whisker, goal difference, making it to the final round. Whew! It was a close one. Defeating Guatemala 2-1, then a 0-0 draw against Antigua, then beating the United States 2-1, then losing 1-0 to the United States, then losing to Guatemala 2-1, meaning that Jamaica would need to beat Antigua and Barbuda and hope that the United States does not lose to Guatemala. If Jamaica won by 2 clear goals and the United States did their business, then it was good. But it was nervy moments. The United States were leading by 3-1. But you know what was happening? Jamaica went up with DeMar Phillips, then Naira Nosworthy. But the Antigua and Barbuda team, they pulled one back. And they're only leading 2-1. Jamaica needed a goal. They needed a spark. If they had any chance of advancing, they needed another goal. And then in came Dane Richards. And then, once more, a beautiful pass from Jermaine Hugh and Dane Richards again. Jamaica were through to the final round. To end the year, Jamaica took part in the Caribbean Cup, but it wasn't one to remember. It was disappointment. A 2-1 loss to French Guyana, a 0-0 draw against Martinique, and then a 1-0 loss to the Cubans. Disappointment. It was disappointing as Jamaica were eliminated and didn't qualify for the 2023 edition of the CONCACAF 2013 edition of the CONCACAF Gold Cup. 2013 came around, and Jamaica started the year positively. A 0-0 draw against Mexico, the first team outside of the United States, Honduras, and Costa Rica to avoid defeat at the Azteca with that 0-0 draw. New faces were seen in this game, with Joby McAnuff returning for the first time in essentially a decade. Gareth McCleary got an opportunity. Marvin Elliott we saw in a World Cup qualifier. We also saw Theo Robinson as well. But the wheels fell off as Jamaica took on Panama. Jamaica were leading by 1-0, thanks to a goal from Marvin Elliott. But a torn ACL from Naira Nosworthy meant a change came. And then Omar Daly played at right back, and Jermaine Taylor shifted to central defence with Adrian Mariappa. Even though Lloyd Doyley was on the bench, who has played 300 games with Adrian Mariappa at Watford, but it was Omar Daly that was put on at right back. The Panamanians equalised. It was 1-1. And Jamaica didn't win a game in the final round. 5 draws, 5 losses. Winfred Schaefer came into the hot seat, where Jamaica got a draw against Panama, 0-0 draw, a 1-1 draw against Costa Rica, ended the campaign with a 2-2 draw against Honduras. In 2014, Cedella Marley.
What's the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning? If you're checking your phone, stop that. Instead, try this tech.
Was named the team's official ambassador and helped the team with their fundraising efforts. On June 24, 2014, the team launched the fundraising campaign Strike Hard for the Reggae Girls to raise $50,000 to pay for practices, travel expenses, housing, nutrition, and equipment in preparation for the 2014 CONCACAF Women's Championship, where they hope to secure a spot at the 2015 Women's World Cup in Canada. Under coach Maren Gordon, the Reggae Girls finished third in their group, but failed to qualify for the 2015 World Cup. A 6-0 victory over Martinique, but losses to Costa Rica and Mexico ended the campaign. On the men's side, the Reggae Boyz won the 2014 Caribbean Cup, their 6th title. Yep, the 6 is real. And that helped them to qualify for the Copa America Centenario in 2016. They won on penalties over their bitter rivals, Trinidad and Tobago. 2015 was an interesting year. It started out well with Jamaica being invited to the 2015 edition of the Copa America. Yep, that is right. Captain Horswell's great relationship with the CONMEBOL top brass of CONMEBOL led to this opportunity. And guess what? Jamaica went to the Copa America, the first Caribbean team to compete at this tournament, and they're competitive in all their games. 1-0 loss to Uruguay, 1-0 loss to Paraguay, and a 1-0 loss to Argentina. And then came the CONCACAF Gold Cup. In many ways, the Copa America was great preparation for the team, and Jamaica had a Gold Cup to remember. A 2-2 draw against Costa Rica, a 1-0 win over Canada, a 1-0 win over El Salvador, the quarterfinals defeating Haiti 1-0, defeating the United States for the first time ever on American soil 2-1. Giles Barnes and Darren Mattox, absolute legends, getting to a Gold Cup final. Jamaica facing Mexico in the Gold Cup final.
This
but fell
video is brought
3-1.
to you by
First time
Andy Gone Nuts. 100% guaranteed fresh coconut water delivered straight to your door. Call 876-309-6128. That's 876-309-6128. Refreshing and affordable. For more information, follow them on Instagram at Andy Gone Nuts. Truly refreshing. And Crumble by Mrs. C. Old English fudge and other delectable sweet treats. Call or WhatsApp 876-586-0471. That's 876-586-0471.
Yes, Reggae Boyz commentary, like and subscribe, yeah?
Hi everybody, I'm Darren Moore and you're watching Reggae Boyz commentary.
Hi, I'm Chris Binney and I'm Jamaica's #1 squash player and 9-time Caribbean champion, and you're watching Reggae Boyz commentary. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe and share button below.
I'm Javon Watson and you're watching Reggae Boyz commentary.
Hi, my name is Lee Williamson. Subscribe to Reggae Boyz commentary.
Hi, my name is Joby McAnuff. Subscribe to Reggae Boyz commentary.
Reggae Boyz invasion of the world. Big side, big side.